Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel, Math Made Easy with Terry in 10 minutes. We'll be talking about coordinate geometry and linear equations today. If you've not reviewed a previous video, please do that. So because as we keep going in this series, we tend to build on previous knowledge. Is that okay? And also, if you've not subscribed, I don't know what you're waiting for, please do subscribe, turn on the notification bell, so when I post new videos, you'll be the first person to know. All right, so we're going to talk about some concepts here and that related to coordinate system and a straight line. I will discuss some topics here. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, what's the coordinate system. All right, so I'm going to start with the coordinate system. All right, so that you can try and understand. I will talk about in terms of 2-dimension and 3-dimension. Okay, so when you have X and Y, so that means in 2-dimension, you have just X and Y. Some we have X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to talk about 3 of them. So regardless, it's almost the same thing. Then also after that, the next topic I'll talk about, all right, we now know the coordinate system. Then how do we then find the distance between 2 points? Is that okay? So how do we then find the distance between 2 points? Okay. So some textbook, we call this length of a segment of a straight line. So some of you might see this in the textbook as length of a segment. So it's exactly the same thing. So, but it's called different name, length of a segment of a straight line. All right. So you can see it in the textbook. It might be called like this, length of a segment. So it's also, you can also have 2D and you can also have 3-dimension as well. So we're going to start with coordinate system. I'm going to introduce the concept of coordinate system quickly. Then also I'm going to tell you, okay, how do you have 2 points or 2 coordinate system? How do you find the distance between both of them? Then after when you're done with that, I'm going to talk about the midpoint. So I'm going to talk about how do you find the midpoint between 2 points. Is that okay? So talk about how do you find the midpoint between 2 points. And when we're done with talking about that, if you check some textbook, they call this midpoint. They also refer it as the midpoint of a segment. So it's exactly the same thing. They might call it the midpoint of a segment. So yes, so you can call that the midpoint of a segment, or you can say the midpoint of a segment of a straight line. So regardless the method you use or the name you call it, it's still the same method you're going to use to solve it. Then when we're done with finding the distance, we then find the midpoint. The next thing I want us to find then will be the slope. So some textbook, we call it a gradient, okay, or slope. All right, so it's how do you get the slope of a line? Okay, how do you get the slope of a line? Then when you're done finding the gradient, or otherwise called the slope, I'm going to talk about what is the equation of a straight line. We'll talk about the equation of a straight line. Oh, and in this point, I'm going to talk about the 4 types. So we'll talk about the 4 types of equation of a straight line. I'll discuss 4 of them. So you have to stay put in the subsequent video series. We'll talk about each and every one of them. Now, some textbook will call it the straight line equation. So you can go to some textbook. They might refer to this as a straight line equation. Okay. All right. So another one, when we're done with that, I'm going to talk about how do we then find equation of a parallel and perpendicular line. So I'm going to talk about equation of a parallel. And perpendicular line. So I'll talk about each and every one of them. All right. Then when I'm done with that, I'm going to talk about the point of intersection. How do you find the point of intersection of 2 lines? Is that okay? We're going to talk about the point of intersection. Point of intersection. The point of intersection of 2 lines. Okay, the point of intersections of 2 lines. I'm going to talk about using the formula method. I'm going to talk about how do you use the formula, and I'm going to talk about the simultaneous equation method. All right. So you can use any of them and you'll get the same answer. Then when I'm done with the point of intersection, the next thing I'm going to talk about triangle problem. So how do we use triangle problem with linear equation? Okay. So triangle problem with linear equation. There I'm going to talk about how do we find the perimeter. We talk about finding the perimeter, and also we're going to talk about how do we find the area. Okay. So in the area, we're going to talk about 4 types. I'm going to talk about the concept of 1/2 AB sine C. We'll talk about the concept of the Heron's formula. When you use the Heron's formula, okay, we'll talk about when 3 vertices are known. When we have the 3 vertices, we'll talk about that as well. Then also we'll talk about if it's a right angle triangle, it's 1/2 base times height. We'll talk about each and every one of this. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about in this series. I'm going to introduce the concept of coordinate system. I'm going to introduce how do you find the distance between 2 points. So when you found the distance, okay, how do you then find the midpoint? All right. Then after that, we'll build it up to gradient. How do you find the gradient of a line? Then we'll now move to the equation of a line. There are 4 types. How do you calculate the equation of a line? Then after that, I'll talk about the equation of a parallel and perpendicular line. Then also, how do you now get the point of intersections of 2 lines? I'll talk about the formula method. I'll talk about the simultaneous equation method, all right? Then when we're done with that, we'll now talk about triangle problem associated with linear equation. So I'll talk about how do you then find the perimeter and how do you then find the area? And then we'll now solve some more examples on that. All right, so that is that for that. I'll see you in the next video. So in the next video, I'm going to start with the coordinate system. So I'm going to start with the first one, coordinate system. We'll discuss the concept of coordinate system and see what we do. We'll pick it up from there. So we'll start with coordinate system. I'm going to talk about the 2-dimensional and 3-dimension. So I'm going to see you in the next video. All right. So I will see you soon.